Hi, this is Karin from the Huntley Library, and today I'm going to show you a technique for doing simple screen printing. This is a snapshot of some of the supplies we're going to be using today for our simple screen printing technique. First and foremost, you are going to need to make a little screen, and for that we're using an embroidery hoop. This is just a smaller one, and they come in all kinds of different sizes, so if you want to make a bigger design or you have a bigger hoop, you can use one of those. And then you need a piece of fabric that's somewhat porous. I'm using this organza, and it's in a white color, so it's pretty easy to see through. You can see my hand through it already, and that's desirable because you want to be able to trace or draw your design on it, and you want it to be porous enough so that your paint can be pressed through it when we do our screen printing actually. So like I said, this is organza. So you can probably find a small piece of this. If you're just going to do the one print to fit in a small embroidery hoop, you can check the remnants section at your local fabric store. Often they'll have smaller pieces that are pretty cheap. So that's for your screen. You will also need some kind of latex paint. I'm using this interior paint, and that's for the design that I'm going to paint on the screen. You want something that isn't going to come off easily, so that when you're scraping paint across it for your print, this isn't going to come off. So I'm using this. You could also try glue if you have that, and that's more easily available to you. But you can pick up a small can of this at a home improvement store or a paint store for not too much money. And I'll show you a couple of designs that I already painted. This is a phoenix that I did a while ago. This is the Wonder Woman symbol. I'll make a few prints with this today too. And then I had a Harry Potter, Dumbledore's army symbol. And here's a little Pikachu. So you can pretty much make any kind of design that you want to with this technique. You are going to need, we're just going to be printing on paper today, so you'll need some paper to print on. I just picked some different colors of cardstock to use. You'll need some paint. Acrylic paint works really well for this, so I just have a few colors of that. There's a blue, a gold, and a red. I have a white and black and some other colors too. We'll see what we use. You'll need a paint brush for painting on your design, and some water to rinse that off. If you're going to create a design, you're going to need a pencil to make your design. You can also print one off, and then if you want to be able to see it really well and trace it onto your fabric, you'll need some kind of marker. So I've got a thicker Sharpie and a finer pointed Sharpie here for my design. For screen printing, you're going to put paint on your design, and then you're going to use something to pull it across to get it to print on your paper. So I've got a couple I have an old Borders rewards card that works really nicely. If you have an old plastic gift card, that'll make a great tool for scraping the paint across. This came from an old plastic cover, an old notebook. This is part of the plastic cover, so if you have this kind of piece of plastic, that might work too. You can use maybe a piece of cardboard if you don't have anything plastic to use. That'll probably suck up some of the paint, but it should be stiff enough to do the job, so any of those will make a fine scraping implement. You will also need a piece of paper if you're designing your own design to put your design on. So those are all of our supplies. So a couple of pointers. When you're making your design, you don't want to choose anything that's really intricate or complicated, because you're going to have to paint around it, or paint anything that you want to show up on your paper when you're screen printing in the colors that you've chosen. You're going to want to leave paint free. So everything else will be painted around. So for Pikachu, I just wanted the eyes and the mouth and the cheeks and kind of the outline to show. So I had to paint around everything. If you have a lot of details to paint around, it's going to be more difficult. Definitely try it if you have something that you really want to do, but I warn you in advance that the more detailed it is, the more difficult it's going to be to get it to look exactly how you want it to. Also, when you're working with these embroidery hoops, scraping the paint over the design can be difficult in this circle shape here, because your tool might not get into all of the corners when you're trying to do this. So you can cut down your tool so that it's smaller, that helps a bit, but I also recommend not putting anything on the very edge here where it's going to be hard for you to get the paint across it. As you can see in my design, I have kind of ignored my own advice here, and I have a few stars around the edge, and I'm hoping that they won't be a problem. We'll see how this goes. Another thing is, if you're drawing your design out first and you're planning it with your embroidery hoop, trace the inside of the hoops for the actual measurement of where things are going to fall. I traced the outside of the hoop the first time, and yeah, you can see how my hoop is now cutting off some of these stars that I drew around the side. So I had to start over and do another one, and that's okay because I was able to put things a little bit, or space things out a little bit better. So you can see the stars are a little bit closer together here, and I got my words more in the design. One thing with letters is that if you paint them on in a if you paint your design on in a certain way, like if I were to do it this way and then try and pull the paint across this, they would be backwards on the print. So I'm gonna, when I trace this on here, I'm gonna end up taking the fabric out of my embroidery hoop and flipping it over so that when I print it, it will be in the right place. Just keep that in mind for the printing process. It doesn't matter too much right now when we're tracing it on here, since we'll be able to turn the fabric over when we do our actual printing. But if you have something else in your design that you want to be facing a certain way, just keep in mind that your letters are going to affect how that shows up too. Okay, so if you've not used an embroidery hoop before, this little implement at the top here will allow you to loosen it and tighten it. So you want to have it loose so that we can get your fabric on here, and then you can just put the two pieces back together again and make sure it's kind of taut and tighten it up again. Remember, righty tighty, lefty loosey. That's how you get it to tighten and loosen. Okay, and then to make your fabric taut, you can just pull on it a little bit. Perfect. So you can go and make your design or print your design, and I'm going to get ready to start tracing mine onto the fabric. If you feel like your design is going to move around, if this is going to move around a lot, you could tape the paper to the embroidery hoop so that it doesn't. Otherwise, you can get started tracing as is. So my plan here is to outline all of the words and the stars here, and then I'm going to paint everything else and mask that so that only these things get printed when I do my screen printing. So this is my finer tipped marker, and I just want to see how that's going to work on here. Doesn't look like it's doing a whole lot, so we're going to switch to the bigger marker and see if that will trace a little bit better. Yep. And this doesn't have to be perfect because right now you're just getting the pattern down, and it's later on when you put the paint on that it's going to really matter where the paint ends up on this. So if you make a mistake with the marker and it doesn't look perfect in the marker, just remember you can correct it at the painting stage. But you do need something to get started with. If you don't want to get marker on your hands while you're doing this, start at the top and work down. And if you're right-handed, work right to left. If you're left-handed, work or left to right. Left-handed, work right to left. Then you're not dragging your hand across the design. I can't tell if there's something funny with my marker or if it's the fabric that's making it a little weird. So this is September, and it is National Library Card Sign-Up Month, and our theme for 2020 is Libraries Are Wonderful, and Wonder Woman is one of our models, icons for this month. Some nice posters that the American Library Association has created to help advertise Library Card Sign-Up Month. So our theme is Libraries Are Wonderful. That kind of looks like a Pac-Man there. All right, is that in place? Yes, okay. Moving on to my W's. So you can see how if you have a complicated design, this part might take you a while to do. I'm more concerned about this space in between being masked out, so I will be careful there when I am doing the painting. And your fabric will move around a little bit, so if you want to brace it with your fingers like I'm doing here, that may help you keep it in place a little better. You don't have to use a permanent marker like I'm using, but something that's not going to bleed all over and that will stay while you're painting is important. Okay. Stars. Yep, and it is hard to work right next to the edge. One more. Okay, great. Libraries are wonderful. Okay, so that's pretty easy to see. Here's the other side. I'm going to paint this side just because I want there to be this space underneath here, so if the paint drips down, it doesn't stick it and glue it permanently to the paper underneath. And I am going to leave the paper underneath so that I don't mess up my table. And if your design is not completely centered anymore, you can play with your fabric a little bit and the tautness too to make sure that you have everything where you want it before you start putting the paint on. Since my paint has sat for a while, I am going to mix that up and then I'll come back and show you how it looks to paint it. Okay, we are ready to paint. If you're using some of this like interior house paint like I have, I really recommend getting one of these little paint can opening tools to help pop the top off. I got one of these a couple years ago when I was helping my folks paint their house, and it was really, really useful. So I have a couple of different brushes here. This one is sort of a thicker brush, and this is a thinner one for more detailed areas. So what I'm going to do is start off with this bigger brush to fill in some of these larger areas, and then depending on how well that goes, I will maybe switch to the finer tipped brush to get into more of the details. You don't want a lot of paint on your brush, and you don't want a lot of paint on your fabric, at least not to begin with, because it's going to take longer to dry, and the wetter it is, the more chances are that it will drip through to the others, to just right through the fabric and onto that paper beneath it. And you can tell where it's still kind of porous right here. Like this is where a spot where paint would get right through, so you definitely would want to touch that up. And you don't have to get it perfect your first pass through. Like, you can do this and then let this first layer dry, then go back and touch up any areas that look like they need attention. And you might only discover that those areas need attention after you do like a test print with this design and see, well, where is the paint coming through that I don't want it to be, and is it looking how I want it to look? So you might get a perfect print the first time that you do it, but you can also keep using these same designs. Like, you can use your hoop for another design. Just take this fabric out once you're done with it and save it for another time and put in a fresh piece of fabric and make another design. And the fabric, since you can, I mean, it's very flat, so you can store it really easily and it doesn't take up a lot of space. Whereas if you were doing actual professional screen printing, you need big machines and lots of power and things. So I actually prefer this because I don't have space for lots of fancy machinery, or the budget really for that sort of thing. You can print on fabric. It depends on the kind of paint that you have. If you have fabric, like designated fabric paint, you could use that instead of the acrylic paint that I'm going to use later on to print on your fabric. And then they also sell gel mediums that you can mix in with various kinds of paint. So there's a gel medium that's for fabric that you can mix with acrylic paint that when you add it, it will help it stay more permanently on fabric. Some of those are heat activated, so once it's dry, you may have to use an iron or throw the item of clothing or fabric in your dryer to have it really set the paint. But that's another option if you want to expand into printing on fabric and not just paper. This is working pretty well with the larger brush for right now. I'm going to switch for a moment just to show you with the smaller brush. We'll see if it helps any getting into some of these tight spaces. Maybe not. Maybe I need an even finer brush here. And I do want to have some definition around these letters for sure. This is going to take a while to dry. It could be, depending on how thickly you've painted your paint on, it could take a few hours. You can help it along if you want to by putting it under a fan or a hair dryer, not on a real hot setting. And then that will speed things up a little bit. And I'm going to let you guys get started on your designs, and we will meet back up when I'm finished painting and when this is dry. I'm still waiting for my other design to dry, but I thought I would show you how this works with one that's already ready to go. Here's a Wonder Woman symbol that I made a few years ago, and we are going to print something from this. I just got this cardstock here. We're going to try a white cardstock, and then you're going to flip this over so that the fabric side is going to be pressed right up against the paper, like so. And you can use full sheets of paper if you want to. I just had cut this I had pre-cut this to half sheets. And I'm going to use some red paint on this. That's hopefully enough right there. With the screen printing, I always end up using more paint than I think I'm going to. Okay, and then you want to hold down your screen and really brace it so that it doesn't move around, otherwise you're going to get paint in places that you don't want it. And then you're just going to use your card to pull it right across your design. And you can do that on the sides too. And a nice accumulation of paint on there. That was possibly more paint than I needed. I just want to get that last bit at the bottom. Okay. And then carefully lift your design up. And it looks like it bled through here a little bit, and I'm not sure if that's because the paint bled underneath the design or if it was actually porous on there. It doesn't look like it was porous, so I might have just had too much paint and it leaked. So we've got half a design there. Let's try another one and see if we can get that to work better. Let's see how this does on a blue piece of paper. Okay, yeah, it looks like my problem was having too much paint on it the first time, so it just bled through underneath a little bit. That came out a little bit better. So this would be good if you were making posters and you wanted them all to look the same, or if you're making like greeting cards, something like that. Do one more on white with the rest of my paint, since I had so much. So the lesson here is don't use as much paint as I did before. And it should work out a whole lot better for you. Yep, that bled through again. So still too much paint. I still have so much. Okay. So when you're done printing with your one screen printing design, you can wash this off if you intend to use it again, so that there's not paint on it still. And once it's dry, you can store it if you're gonna use it later on. And I've run out of clean hands to turn off the video. Now I'm gonna try the Phoenix that I painted a while ago. I don't remember ever testing it with paint though, so we'll see how this goes. Looks like that's all fitting on the paper. Maybe I'll turn it this way. Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna try a little bit less paint this time. I'm gonna do a yellow or a gold. And this paint is a little runny, so that might be part of the problem with it bleeding underneath. Okay, here we go. I'm going to try maybe not pressing this hard. It is really wet paint, so if your paint is thicker than this, you'll probably have more success. I have concerns. Okay. Let's lift that up and see. Oh, that came out much better. Okay. So I think maybe not pressing as hard was helpful. Not having as much paint also helpful. Let's put that on blue as well and see how that looks. And I hopefully have enough paint left on here to get one more design. It's harder to tell once it's already painted over if you're actually filling in the spaces here where you want the paint to go. Okay, let's see how that looks. Oh yeah. And there it bled through again, so once again, thicker paint is a good option. We're going to do one more while we're waiting for the other one to dry, and I'm going to do our little Pikachu Pokemon here. You can use more than one color of paint if you want to. It's hard to get it exactly where you want it, so it's going to be more of a stylistic thing. So I'm going to put a little bit of black up in the corner there, and a little bit of red in the center, and a little bit of my very wet runny yellow right there. And then I have this gold paint. I don't know how this is going to work. It's sort of sparkly. We'll see. And I'll put that, I'll do like a couple of drops of that and see what that does. Feel free to experiment as always. Okay, this time I'm going to use my plastic notebook cover here. And we'll do sort of a stripey thing, like that, and like that, and maybe to the side. I think that covered everything. Let's see. Ooh, I didn't quite get his feet, but that looks pretty cool, actually. I'll put him off to the side, and let's do one on red. Oh, maybe not red because I have red paint. Let's do one on blue. Okay, here's Pikachu again. I still have some paint on here. So go down. This will be different still because it's a different mixture of this. Maybe I got his feet this time. Let's see. Ooh, yeah, that turned out pretty cool. He's kind of plaid. And I might have enough paint for one more, so I'll do one more on white here. It is kind of getting all mixed up at this point. It's probably just going to be a maroon Pikachu. That's what it's looking like. But with some black accents. I think I lost the very tip of his tail maybe, but still very cute. Okay, it looks like everything is dry and we should be able to test this now. I did have a few spots that I had to touch up, so it took a little bit longer for it to completely dry. And let's do it. So all I have left now, I think, is red paper and maybe a sheet of blue. Using all of the white, whoops. So we'll do this on red paper. I like how the gold turned out with the Pikachu, so I think I'm going to use some of that. And maybe some of the, what else? Maybe some of the blue, too. So here's some blue. Here's some of that yellow. Ooh, there's a big bubble in there. And then here's the gold. Alright, my handy gift, or handy members rewards card. Oh, it's going to be very green in some places. Okay, let's see how it turned out. Lift. Oh, cool. like it. It's a little bit hard to read, but the lettering actually turned out better than I thought it would from the paint job that I did, which was, it made it look like the letters were going to be really, really skinny, but that actually looks pretty nice. So just remember to clean up after you're done with everything. These are my different designs, and I just rinsed all of the paint off of them and then hung them up to dry, and they dry pretty quickly once the actual paint design is dry. The organza doesn't take long to dry at all. And then you can either stick them back in the embroidery hoop frames, or you can store them flat and use your embroidery hoops for something else until you're ready to screen print again. I'm just going to do a quick recap of how everything turned out. This is the last one I did, the design I created while we were working together today. The libraries are wonderful, the Wonder Woman symbol. And here's some of the Wonder Woman ones I did before, where it got a little bleedy. You could still use this and maybe like put some glitter or something over the top of that so it looks a little bit more intentional. And you could incorporate it into a collage or something like that. Here's the one on blue that I did. Here are the phoenixes. One in blue, and then there's a one on red paper. Those I think I want to add some gold touches to, and then that will be pretty distinctive. Here's one of the Pikachus that we did that was multicolored. I like how that one turned out. Here's the one that was mostly maroon. And then this one I think is my favorite one, with kind of the gold accents right there. Very colorful. I hope your designs turned out really well, and please share them with us in the comments if you have a chance. Happy Library Card Sign Up Month! I hope you had a good time today and that you created something really special. Libraries are wonderful! See you next time! For more fun videos and other ideas, please check out our website, www.huntleylibrary.org. Bye-bye.